The Vatican has excommunicated members of a conservative Catholic sect. The Society of St. Pius X defied the Pope by ordaining bishops without his consent. They've been met with one of the harshest punishments that can be given by the Church. Noel Debien is the ABC's Religion and Ethics editor, and he joins us now from Sydney. Noel, welcome. So we'll get to the ordination of the bishops in a moment. But first off, what are the teachings of the Society of St. Pius X, the teachings or beliefs, that make it so antithetical to the broader Catholic Church?
First thing is rejecting the authority of the Pope. That's number one. But they also reject things like ecumenism, dealing with other religions, other Christian religions. They reject interfaith stuff. They also still keep anti-Semitic prayers in Good Friday, praying for the perfidious Jew. Catholics now reject that. And that's all been rejected since, Vatican Council in the 1960s. And these people are opposed to that council. And they stick to the Mass of 1570, the old Latin Mass, and all that goes with it.
And so the Pope has excommunicated 6 bishops and 750 priests. It's been described as an aggressive response to this sect proceeding with these ordinations, disregarding the urging of the Pope. Were you surprised at the extent of this decree?
Well, it's actually bigger than you've said, because there could be up to 1 million followers of this group, and they're all excommunicated too, anybody who's formally part of it. And this is not the first time they've been excommunicated. They were first excommunicated in 1988, when the movement was seen to be, out of control and denying papal authority. And in a sense, it was then restored back in 2009 by Pope Benedict. They've been in and out. Pope Benedict was a little bit more sympathetic to traditional movements, and now it has, it's a predictable thing that's happened. It was foreseeable, and we know that that's what was going to happen. We knew that this would happen if they ordained bishops.
And you've touched on this already, but what are the realistic estimates of the numbers of people who follow the Church, and what now for them?
Oh, well, I can be more specific. There's roughly 4,000 of them, we think, in Australia, and there are parishes in multiple states. You can find them easily and see where they are. There's probably 1,400 of them in terms of priests, nuns, monks, and all those sorts of people.
In Australia?
No, in the world.
Right.
1,400 in the world, 4,000 people in Australia, and of those there would only be, 10 or 12 priests, as far as I know. There might be more, because they were running a seminary near Goulburn as well, which got closed down during COVID, and they were bringing people in internationally. So it's possible there could be more, and that I've got that number wrong for Australia specifically in terms of priests.
Yeah, and so what now for them?
Well, they are excommunicate. So in that sense, that means that the Pope has said their sacraments, confession is now, the sacrament of confession is not even valid, meaning it doesn't work. So he said that. Excommunication makes something illicit and aside, so there is no sort of rapport going on with the Church. And in that sense, they're now separate. They are exactly what you described at the beginning, a sect.
So do you think the Pope did the right thing? Are you willing to offer an opinion on that? And what was the danger if Pope Leo did not issue this decree?
Well, popes do what popes do, and canon law says that if you disobey the Pope, if you ordain bishops, now it says that, because in history there was a time when the Pope didn't appoint all the bishops, but they do now. And what was happening was Bernard Fellay and Alfonso de Galarreta, who are the 2 bishops that are still living, they're in their late 60s. So they were running out of time, basically. If they didn't have bishops, they couldn't ordain priests. So from their point of view, there's a time factor in all of this. And the Pope just happens to be the Pope at this time, as their last 2 bishops are ageing, and the Pope has done exactly what the Pope would do, and that is when somebody is schismatic and denies papal authority, they are punished with the most severe punishment the Church can give, which is excommunication.
And so Leo has been Pope for a relatively short period of time. Was the Society of St. Pius particularly targeting him with this move to consecrate the bishops, or is it just coincidence that this has come to a head under his papacy? Because this is a debate that has been going on for decades.
Look, there could be a little bit of both here, in that Pope Benedict was much more sympathetic to traditionalism and really pushed the Church back. He called it the reform of the reform. So under him, they were sort of quiet, and he was the one who lifted the excommunication. They didn't really have a proper status inside the church, but they were considered Catholics. And then this new pope, I think, is not as traditional in his sympathies as Pope Benedict was. So it's possible that not only is it because their bishops are aging and they needed to do it or they wouldn't have anybody to ordain their new priests, but it could also be a factor in the latest administration being less to their taste than the previous pope was, if I could say that.
And what does this action, described by some as aggressive, which I mentioned before, indicate about the nature of Pope Leo and his style of leadership?
Well, that he's firm, that he's not going to be compromised. He has previously warned them, like he sent very reasonable messages to them saying, please don't do this. We don't want you to do that. We don't want it to go ahead. And that was with the full knowledge of what canon law would require, which would be severe punishment if it did go ahead. And, you know, the church has this argument in China too, where China keeps appointing bishops and the church doesn't want them to. And it's a thing that the Pope has controlled the appointment of bishops for at least a century or more, and that's where it sits now. So this was a test of authority, if you know what I mean, for the Pope, and he, as far as I can see, has risen to it and done what he needed to do.
And you've mentioned China there. Are there any other groups within the church who might be prompted to test Leo's authority?
Look, it's quite possible that, you know, you talk about the slippery slope, that if one person can defy the Pope, then somebody else can come up with, a way to defy the Pope. And in one sense, the Pope presides over, 1.5 billion people with all sorts of factions and functions. And in many ways, the Pope is trying to, I suppose, keep the church together, be the bridge builder between the various factions. And there comes a point at which a faction steps so far out of line that this is what happens, excommunication.